Ladies and gentlemen, worry is a thief. It sneaks in at night and steals your peace. It gnaws at the edges of your joy. It whispers to you that the world is out of control, that you are alone, that all may be lost. And yet, how strange it is that we who believe in an eternal God should ever think ourselves abandoned. Imagine a child who clutches his father's hand in the dark, but still trembles because he cannot see the road ahead. Does the father let go simply because the child is afraid? Of course not. Neither does God. He has chosen his own, and he does not lose what is his. Worry is a thief that creeps into the mind, often uninvited, and takes more than it ever promises. It begins with a whisper, a nagging thought about what might go wrong, and before long it has wrapped itself around the heart, like a vice. It presents itself as responsibility, as wisdom even, convincing us that if we do not fret over a matter, we are not taking it seriously enough. Yet for all its demands, worry gives nothing in return but weariness. It does not solve problems, nor does it change outcomes. It merely drains the strength needed to face them. At its core, worry is a misplaced trust. It is the illusion that by turning a matter over and over in our minds, we can gain some measure of control. We believe that if we think hard enough, plan well enough, anticipate every possibility, we can keep disaster at bay. But life has a way of proving us wrong. The most carefully laid plans can unravel in an instant. The things we fear the most often arrive despite our best efforts to prevent them, and more often than not, they arrive in ways we never anticipated at all. Worry thrives in uncertainty, feeding on the unknown. It convinces us that if we cannot see the full picture, something terrible must be lurking just beyond our sight. And yet, is this not a failure to trust the one who sees all things? If we believe that God is sovereign, that he is good, and that he does not abandon his own, then worry has no rightful place in our hearts. It is, in many ways, an act of forgetfulness, forgetting who God is, what he has promised, and how he has been faithful time and again. It is not that concerns are illegitimate. We live in a world that is full of real troubles, and some burdens are heavy indeed. But there is a difference between carrying a burden and being crushed beneath it. To recognize difficulty is not the same as surrendering to fear. The great deception of worry is that it isolates us, convincing us that we are alone in our struggles, left to fend for ourselves. This is not so. The very things we worry about, our needs, our fears, our future, are already known to God. He is not caught off guard by the things that trouble us, nor is he indifferent to them. The truth is that worry does not prepare us for the future, it only robs us of the present. It distracts, distorts, and diminishes. It makes giants out of shadows and convinces us that we are smaller than we truly are. It turns our gaze inward when we should be looking upward. The more we give in to worry, the more it demands, and soon it becomes a habit, a constant companion whispering of all that could go wrong. But worry is a thief, and a thief must not be entertained. A child walking in the dark may clutch his father's hand, yet still tremble with fear. He does not doubt the father's presence, nor does he question his father's love, but the darkness unsettles him. He cannot see the road ahead, and that alone is enough to make him anxious. This is the nature of fear. It is not always based on reality, but on perception. The unknown looms larger than it truly is. And the heart, so easily swayed, struggles to trust what it cannot see. But the father does not let go simply because the child is afraid. The strength of the grip does not depend on the child's confidence, but on the father's faithfulness. We are often like that child, feeling our way through life, uncertain of what lies ahead. We may believe in God, we may trust in his goodness, but when darkness comes, when the path ahead is obscured, fear takes hold. We imagine the worst, convinced that if we cannot see the way forward, then perhaps there is no way at all. We measure God's presence by our emotions, and when fear is loud, we assume he must be silent. But feelings are not always reliable guides. The father does not let go simply because the child's hand trembles. Trust is not built in times of ease. It is easy to believe in God's provision when the cupboards are full, to believe in his protection when the road is smooth. But true trust is forged in uncertainty, when answers are delayed and the way is unclear. It is in those moments that faith is refined, when we must choose to believe that God is holding us even when our grip feels weak. If our faith rested only on our own ability to remain steadfast, we would be in constant peril. But faith is not about the strength of our hold on God, it is about the strength of His hold on us. Doubt often creeps in when prayers seem unanswered, when difficulties persist longer than we expected. We assume that if God were truly near, He would have already intervened. But does a father's presence depend on his child's ability to understand his actions? A child may not always grasp why his father leads him a certain way or allows certain hardships, but the father sees what the child cannot. He knows the dangers ahead, the lessons that must be learned, the growth that will come through the journey. The child may protest, may cry out in confusion, but none of this changes the father's grip. It is not our fear that determines whether we are held, nor is it our certainty that secures us. We are held because He has chosen to hold us. We are led not because we know the way, but because He does. We may feel afraid, we may feel uncertain, but the truth remains: God never lets go. Storms are inevitable. They come without warning, tearing through carefully ordered lives, leaving chaos in their wake. Some storms are brief, mere tempests that pass quickly, leaving little damage behind. Others linger, relentless and unforgiving, shaking even the strongest foundations. No one is exempt from them. Wealth does not prevent them, nor does wisdom, nor does faith itself. The presence of a storm does not mean something has gone wrong. It only means that life is unfolding as it always has in a world that is not yet whole. There is a common assumption that faith should act as a shield, sparing believers from suffering. Some hold to the mistaken belief that if one is truly faithful, life should be smooth and predictable, free from hardship and loss. But such an expectation is not only false, it is dangerous. When storms do come, as they always do, the one who expects to be spared will be left bewildered, even bitter. He will wonder if God has turned away, if He has been forgotten, if faith was an illusion all along. But the promise was never that storms would not come. The promise was that we would not face them alone. An anchor is not needed on calm waters. A ship does not drop anchor when the sea is still and the sky is clear. It is only when the wind howls and the waves rise that the anchor is cast down, holding firm beneath the surface. Faith, too, is tested in turbulence, not in tranquility. It is easy to profess trust in God when life is predictable, when plans unfold without interruption. But true faith is revealed in uncertainty, when everything that once felt stable begins to shift. When prayers seem to go unanswered, when suffering stretches on longer than expected, when fear whispers that perhaps this time God will not come through, these are the moments that define what we truly believe. Storms strip away illusions. They remind us of our frailty, of how little control we truly have. They expose the foundations upon which we have built our lives, revealing whether we have anchored ourselves in something immovable or in things that cannot hold. If security is found in comfort, in success, in the approval of others, then the storm will be devastating. But if security is found in something deeper, in something beyond what the eye can see, then though the winds may howl and the waves may crash, the soul will not be lost to them. To expect a life free from storms is to misunderstand the nature of both life and faith. Struggle is not evidence of God's absence, nor is hardship a sign of His neglect. He does not lead His own into storms only to abandon them there. A life without trials may be desirable, but it would also be a life without depth, without refinement, without the opportunity to learn what it truly means to trust. Faith is not truly tested when the sun is shining and all is well. It is easy to trust when prayers are answered quickly, when doors open effortlessly, when life moves according to our expectations. But the real measure of faith is seen in the dark days, when uncertainty looms, when disappointment settles in, when silence stretches longer than we ever imagined. It is in these moments that faith either deepens or crumbles, for it is one thing to say we trust God when all is going well, and quite another to cling to that trust when everything seems to be falling apart. Doubt often creeps in during the silence, whispering questions that demand answers. Why is this happening? Where is God in all of this? Why has He not intervened? The human heart longs for clarity, for reasons that make sense, for visible proof that God is still near. When those things are absent, it is tempting to believe that faith has been misplaced. But faith is not the certainty of outcomes, it is the certainty of God's character. It is the quiet decision to trust even when understanding is beyond reach. There is a kind of faith that is based on circumstances, one that rises and falls with the tides of life. It is strong when life is pleasant, but fragile when trials come. This is not the faith that endures. The faith that carries a soul through the storm is the kind that is anchored in something deeper than the moment. It does not deny hardship, nor does it pretend that pain is not real. It simply refuses to let hardship and pain define the truth. Faith does not eliminate fear, but it does remind the heart that fear is not the final word. The darkest moments in life often feel like the absence of God, as though He has stepped away and left us to navigate the difficulty alone. But silence is not abandonment. A teacher does not speak during an exam, but that does not mean he is not present. A father does not always explain why a painful lesson is necessary, but that does not mean he loves his child any less. The quiet does not mean God is absent. It simply means that faith is being refined, that trust is being given the opportunity to grow beyond feelings and into something unshakable. Some of the greatest testimonies of faith have come from those who walked through suffering with no immediate resolution, no visible answer to their prayers. Their trust was not built on comfort but on conviction. They believed, not because they always saw, but because they knew. This is the kind of faith that endures the fire, the kind that does not crumble under pressure. It is the kind of faith that, even in darkness, chooses to say, "I do not see the way, but I know the one who holds it." We forget so easily. The human mind, though capable of great wisdom, is also prone to great forgetfulness. It is not that we do not know who God is, it is that we fail to remember when it matters most. We read of His power, His faithfulness, His ability to provide, yet in the face of trouble, we act as though we have never seen His hand before. Worry thrives in this forgetfulness, feeding on the illusion that we are alone, that we must carry the weight of life on our own shoulders. When fear grips the heart, it does not ask what we know to be true, it only asks what we feel in the moment. The Israelites, having seen the Red Sea part before their very eyes, still doubted God when they grew hungry in the wilderness. Elijah, after calling down fire from heaven, ran in fear when threatened by Jezebel. The disciples, having witnessed Jesus calm the storm, still panicked when another storm arose. It is the same pattern, repeated over and over again. People who have seen God's faithfulness, who have lived through His provision, who have experienced His power, still falling into fear when new troubles arise. Why does this happen? It is not because God has changed, nor because He has failed. It is because fear shouts while faith often speaks in a whisper. Fear demands immediate attention, while faith requires reflection. When we do not remind ourselves of what is true, fear fills the silence with its own version of reality. It tells us that this time is different, that perhaps God will not come through, that perhaps we have been forgotten. It draws our attention to what we do not know rather than what we do. And when we listen, we begin to forget. This forgetfulness is not merely a lapse in memory, it is a shift in perspective. When we forget who God is, we see only what is in front of us. Problems seem larger, solutions seem fewer, and the future appears uncertain. The more we dwell on these thoughts, the more they take root, until worry becomes the default response to every challenge. It is not that God has stopped working, it is that we have stopped seeing. Scripture repeatedly calls us to remember, not because God needs reminders, but because we do. We are told to remember what He has done, to recall His past faithfulness, to recount His mighty works. This is not mere sentimentality, it is an act of war against fear. When we remember, we strip worry of its power. We remind ourselves that the God who sustained us before will sustain us again. We see our present troubles through the lens of His past faithfulness. The more we remember, the more we recognize that fear is a liar, and that faith, though quiet, has always been right. Forgetting leads to fear, but remembering leads to trust. There is a deep security in being chosen, to be called, to be claimed, to be held by one who does not change. This is the kind of assurance that nothing in this world can offer. The world offers conditional belonging, love that must be earned, acceptance that can be lost. But when God calls His own, He does so with a certainty that does not waver. His grip is not weak, nor is His decision uncertain. He does not choose in haste, nor does He abandon in regret. Those whom He calls He keeps. Yet doubt often creeps in. The heart, so easily swayed by emotions, begins to wonder if it is truly secure. It questions whether it is worthy, whether it has done enough, whether it is possible to fall beyond God's reach. This is the great temptation, to believe that we are held only as long as we are strong enough to hold on. But security in God is not based on human effort. It does not rest on performance, nor is it threatened by failure. If it did, no one would stand. The strongest among us waver, the most faithful stumble, the most devoted fall short. If security in God depended on human faithfulness, it would be no security at all. The foundation of this assurance is not in the chosen, but in the one who chooses. He does not make mistakes, nor does He abandon what is His. His love is not fickle, shifting with circumstance or emotion. It is steady, deliberate, unshaken by the storms of life. He does not rescue only to leave his own to fend for themselves. He does not call only to later reconsider. He is not like man, prone to change his mind. What he has set in motion he will complete. Fear whispers otherwise. It points to weakness, to failure, to unworthiness. It suggests that perhaps this time grace has run out. But such thoughts misunderstand the very nature of God. He did not choose his own because they were strong, nor because they were worthy. He chose them because of his love, his purpose, his will. And that which he begins, he finishes. This security does not breed carelessness, nor does it lead to complacency. If anything, it strengthens. A child who knows he is truly loved does not fear every misstep. He does not live in constant terror that one mistake will cast him out. Instead, he walks with confidence, knowing that even in failure, he is not forsaken. This is the difference between worldly belonging and divine security. The world demands perfection before it grants approval, but God calls the imperfect, the weak, the unworthy, and makes them his own. Nothing can separate God's chosen from his hand, not trouble, not failure, not fear, not even death itself. The same God who called them is the one who holds them, and what he holds, no force in heaven or earth can take away. We have seen how worry steals joy, how fear distorts reality, and how storms are inevitable. Yet we are not abandoned. The hands that form the stars are the same hands that hold us. God's chosen ones are never lost, never forgotten, never forsaken. Our security is not in our strength but in his. When fear rises, when doubts whisper, when trials shake our foundations, we must remember he never lets go. The world may be uncertain, but he is not. And if he has called us his own, then nothing, no storm, no failure, no fear can ever change that.